GB Genjin, or as it was known in North America, Bonk's Adventure, and I think it was known as BC Kid in Europe, except that this was like the Game Boy version, and not the version on the PC Engine / that other system which I refuse to acknowledge ever existed in North America. And while people might think this is a straight port of that particular game, it's actually not. While this game features the same mechanics, similar level design, as well as basic premise and execution, bosses are completely new, and it is, in its own right, its own completely unique game. It's just very, very similar to that other game that shares its own name. Now the plot, as far as I can tell, is there is some evil dinosaur king trying to destroy Dinosaur Caveman Island or something, and Bonk has to go stop him. But what I find intriguing about this world is, true to what he is, Bonk is probably the single least civilized thing on this island, because quite like a caveman, he seems trapped in the past. His abilities are to headbutt things and jump, whereas the dinosaurs have learned to use cars and create submarines and build villages and create culture and civilized society, whereas Bonk is basically just some completely rabid caveman just going around destroying things for the sheer fun of it. And to be fair, destroying things for the sheer fun of it is completely cathartic, so I understand, but still, he is very clearly the single least civilized and least evolved thing here. So basically, what I'm saying is, I'm still not sure why we didn't evolve from reptiles. Although in proto-human defense, Isla was a pretty kick-ass cave woman. Anyway, this is a fairly basic platformer. You start at the left of the screen, you go to the right. But if I recall, there was a level actually designed to be completely vertical, and it wasn't the worst thing ever, although it was very slow going. Beyond that, it is a fairly basic platformer. Bonk can jump, he can bonk his head, hence the name. If you jump and bonk, you can extend your jump a little bit, and if you mash your attack while jumping, you can sort of faux hover. And this ability is absolutely paramount to completing later levels, as well as being a great throwback to the PC Engine, which had a dedicated turbo button. Or at least the North American one that never existed did. Beyond that, it is fairly basic. There's your bonking, your jumping. There are a few power-ups, including health, in the form of these black hearts. There are these white heart containers, which extend your life until you game over. There are lives you can pick up, as well as meat, which depending on the size of it, will either make Bonk very angry, or very, very angry, and give him temporary invulnerability, as well as a shouting attack. The last power-up you can get in this game is a turtle power-up you get for bonking submarines, and near as I can tell, all it does is get you killed a lot. I mean, I think on paper it's supposed to let you swim faster and protect you, but for the most part it just gets you killed a lot. The bosses themselves are fairly unique. They're completely different from the ones from the console games, as I've said. However, they have some of the wonkiest hitboxes ever, including the last boss, which is like this T-Rex thing, whose complete hitbox is his eyebrow. If you hit anywhere else on his giant face, you will take damage, and you won't hurt him, which feels almost as cheap as Kaiser Sigma from Mega Man X3. Except in this game, you don't get something like the Z-Saber, which kind of balances that difficulty out a bit. No, instead you just kind of have to throw yourself at him and hope you hit him exactly 25 times, which, yes, is way more than necessary. But overall, the bosses are good if you can get past the kind of janky hitboxes. The only other complaint I have against the bosses is they do follow very, very basic patterns, and if you pick up on that, outside of bonking into the wrong part of their hitboxes, you can pretty much take them down with no problem whatsoever. Outside of the bosses, the only other issue I really have with this game is, even for a Game Boy game, there is an ungodly amount of slowdown at times. And maybe that's just a sign this game was trying to push the Game Boy hardware to its limits, but even when it's just bonk on screen, sometimes it just slows down for no adequately explained reason. And that gets a little bit annoying. But overall, the gameplay to GB Genjin is fun, and barring the janky hitboxes on the bosses, very well executed. If a little bit simplistic, but there's nothing wrong with being simplistic either. Now, the overall presentation to GB Genjin is fair. The bosses look cool, the enemies are varied, and there's a decent amount of detail with all of them. I love how expressive Bonk is. despite the fact I still can't entirely figure out the whole power-up system to this game. And the environments are varied, although they do follow the basic trend of Fire World, Ice World, Kevin Costner's Water World, and Grass World. But that said, it does what it needs to do for a Game Boy title. It offers you a decent amount of variance, all while constrained to a monochrome display. The audio design in this game is fair. There are a few catchy songs in this game, however they repeat songs quite a lot, so you will be hearing the exact same songs over and over. I think total, including like the boss themes, there's maybe like 7 songs in this game, which does feel a little bit light given the number of levels, but overall I'd say it's about average. It does what it needs to do, and it does it relatively well. Now, if you want a copy of GB Genjin / Bonk's Adventure on the Game Boy / BC Kid, you can get it for a fair price. It's about $5 or so, and I would say that's a fairly good price for this game at twice that much. That said, if you're going to be like me, you can pick this up on the Genjin collection on the Game Boy, which was one of like 12 compilation carts for the Game Boy, and 1/2 of the Hudson ones. And that's a wee bit more expensive at about $30. But at the same time, you get this, you get the sequel, Bonk's Revenge, as well as like this weird minigame collection, and overall, it's a pretty decent deal for what you're getting. And I guess, in the end, for all the shortcomings of being on that one weird console that never existed, Bonk made a pretty solid Game Boy game, and an even better sequel, if you can believe it. And I think it's pretty safe to say if you like platformers, while this one is a bit simplistic, GB Genjin on the Game Boy is a pretty fair pickup.